Hi, I'm Simon Sporter and welcome to our latest video. Today's video, I'm pleased to say, is that we've got Lee Evans with us, Hertfordshire chairperson. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.
Lee has come to talk to us about his experiences of chairing Hertfordshire County, Hertfordshire County Tennis, I should say. And let's start, Lee, if we could, by just tell us a bit about you, your background, and how you first got into tennis.
Right. Oh, that's a good one to start with. Started probably when I was about 10. Um, and I think my mum was looking for something to keep my brother and I out of mischief during a school holiday. So it took us to I suppose what was a sort of a beginner's tennis camp almost, as they are these days. I think in those days it wasn't quite as I'm not sure how much there was of that to it, but it's a couple of hours each day for about a week in a park in Bushy. So that's a long time ago now. The rackets were wooden. The courts were obviously the grey stuff. So and we probably didn't have many, and the balls would have been white. So it's that sort of time, just to put it in perspective. So quite a difficult game back then, but. Despite all that, my brother and I were hooked. My sister, who was a bit younger, then took the game up as well. We joined a local club in Watford, a small club, a three-court club back then. That was near to our house. And then we moved a couple of years later and joined the bigger club in Watford, which you all know very well, West Herts in Watford, which is probably the biggest club in Watford, I would say. And well, I've been there ever since. So that was, that's a long time. That's about 50 years ago now. I've been there about 50 years. And I suppose the main thing for me is it's all been generally about playing tennis. And in the sort of second half of it, probably volunteering has come into it more and more. So the playing tennis, it's been with my whole family. So I met my wife there. She was unlucky enough to be drawn with me in the mixed doubles. And of course, we had to then get married after that. My whole family, so my brother and sister have played there all their lives, and my kids have played there as well. So, very much sort of play through playing tennis at a club and really enjoying playing at a club. Obviously, meet loads of people through tennis. It's such a good social sport, as you know really well. And then I became men's captain at West Herts, and I think in my mid-20s. And I was men's captain for about 15-20 years, I think. Probably a bit too long, really, but it was, very enjoyable, though. And then I think just by playing tennis throughout the county, in all the competitions and stuff, I suppose you get known a little bit. And probably shouldn't be saying this, but I think I got a call to see if I was interested in joining the county committee, essentially. Not the sort of thing that goes on these days, of course, but no, that's the way probably it was done in those times. That was 2007, so I've been on the Herts management committee now for, what is that? That's about 17 years. Primarily, my main role has been in running sort of competitions. I've been the competition lead for most of that time, and still am actually. I was the councillor, the LTA councillor, so the link with the LTA, for 3 years, just prior to becoming president 2 years ago. 3 years, yeah. So I'm in my third year as president now. So the last sort of 6 years, I've had additional roles. 3 years as a councillor, and now I'm the president or chair, whichever you'd like to call it, really.
Okay, great. So fast forward to today. And tell me a bit about your role as chair. Obviously, you've been doing it. I think this is your third year now.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Tell us about what it's like. What do you do? What's the responsibilities of it? Because counties do vary. Hertfordshire is quite a big county. It's quite spread out. Goes a long way north, all the way up to Bishop Stortford, and all the way south to sort of, I suppose, Watford. So what do you do?
Well, yeah, it's a tough one actually to sum up in a way, because when I took on the role as chair president, in a way, I didn't want to do an awful lot differently to what I was doing before. But so what I'm really lucky about is that I have some really wonderful colleagues to rely on. So there's lots of areas obviously involved in tennis, lots of different areas. As I said, I'm the lead on competitions, so that tends to be my area. But there's other people on the committee who are doing fantastic work in all the other different areas, whether it's development, coaching, etc. So a lot of my role is probably coordinating. Obviously, there's elements of sort of chairing or leading on certain areas. The one thing I really wanted to do, and that was I probably wouldn't have said yes to sort of stepping up into the role if I hadn't done it, was to make us more visible and take us out to the venues much more, so that actually people found out a little bit more about who we were, what we did, and what we were able to do for them should they need any support at any time. So that's probably the sort of, I would say, the one thing that I've and sort of probably added to the communication that we put out to try and help with that as well. That's probably the one main area where my role has changed. And I'd like to think, as I say, we are a committee, and although in name I am the chair, the president, or what have you, I see us very much as we're all putting in well.
And how often does your actual committee meet?
We meet. We've sort of got 5 meetings lined up in a year, and then we try and have an away day each year, which is good fun to arrange. Trying to get people there for a whole day. Luckily, most of the committee don't have your normal day jobs these days, but 1 or 2 do. But we try and have an away day each year when we have it. We try and plan for the next year, depending on how many of the committee are going to stay on. Of course, we tend to have that before the AGM, where you may have a new committee members, which in fact we have this year. So, and then we tend to try and fit in. We have a number of subcommittees, which we'll probably go on to in a minute. In terms of the structure of Hertfordshire, really, and overseeing tennis in the county. And so, a number of us on the management committee will probably sit on each of those subcommittees. So we meet up, generally on these sort of virtual meetings, fairly often, I would say.
So the 5 meetings would be
particularly with some of the work going on, like governance, is an obvious one. So
are the 5 meetings in person, or some of them might be on a media platform?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm guessing this is probably fairly common, really. Up until COVID, they were all in person, always at our county centre, which is in sort of the centre of the county, really, which is quite useful.
Yes.
Then of course they all went virtual. We've tried to get back to a mix of the two, and haven't quite really made that yet.
Right.
The few that we've had lined up to be in person, I think we've probably only managed 1 so far. You tend to find that 1 or 2 people aren't going to be able to make it, so we've then switched back to having it on as a virtual one. We're going to try the next one, in fact, which is in May. We're going to try a sort of hybrid one, because we know 1 or 2 people can't make it. They're going to dial in, but the rest of us will go to Gosling. We're going to see how it goes. And we're also trying different times, actually, for the meetings, because we've tended to have them in the evening, 7 o'clock. I would say I'm not the best chair in the world. That's why I prefer to call myself the president, because chairing a meeting, getting a meeting to finish at after a couple of hours, that is tough. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to do. And you don't want to stretch a meeting on beyond sort of 9:30 in the evening. So we're trying a sort of an earlier start as well. We're trying a 4 o'clock start for the odd one.
Okay, so you used the example just now that a lot of your management committee are people who don't necessarily have, in effect, in inverted commas, day jobs.
Yes.
But the new breed of committee member across the country is much more likely, and volunteers in general are much more likely to have work commitments. And in effect, we're trying to appeal to getting more people on board who do have sort of a wider experience. So how can you cater for that? Because people have got less time on their hands, but they want to give something to volunteer roles, but they may have full-time jobs as well. Can you cater for that, or is that where the subcommittees come in?
Well, I think we've got to cater for that, because you're absolutely right. You know, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to do that in Hertfordshire as well, is appeal to younger people generally to you know, to give up their time as the sort of key, well, not just key volunteers. Obviously, I suppose we call them key volunteers to come onto this sort of management committee. And I think that's proving tricky, to be honest, because certainly the last couple of years, and you know, I would say the workload, and a lot of this is down to the attempts to get the governance and county associations, and in venues, all venues as well. They're all doing so much to try and bring themselves to the right place on the governance side, where, you know, everything they do is fair. You know, it's open to everyone, all that sort of stuff. You know, I mentioned getting a phone call, you know, to get me onto the committee. We don't want to be doing that. We want to be putting fair and open stuff so that we can. So it's inclusive to everybody, and that very much for me is about getting young people more involved. Yeah, I mean, how do we do that? I mean, I think it is a tough one. I think it's a real conundrum. I've been lucky enough to see at the club that I belong at, they've just got a couple of very, you know, young people on their committee, and I was really, really pleased about that. Making that work with the management committee, and I think subcommittees is definitely one way, Simon. I think you're right to say that. Certainly, at least to introduce people to it, to see how they get on to start with.
So using an example of a subcommittee, so if I've got it right, you have your management committee, and then maybe each member of that management committee has a key responsibility for a subcommittee. So if we take as an example juniors, so one of your management committee would be responsible for juniors in the county, and there'd be a subcommittee for juniors, as an example.
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually have one sort of labeled juniors. We have, you know, performance. We have then development, coaching. You know, so there are. Yeah, we've got probably. I should have looked this up, shouldn't I? Something like 15, let's say, subcommittees.
Okay.
So, just for example, I lead one called tournament and competitions, and then we have a governance committee as well. But yeah, absolutely right. So, and then on those committees, so on my tournament and competitions committee, for example, there are about 10 people, and that's a mixture on that one of officials, competition organisers. I mean, I run a competition myself, but there's a number of other competitions we run in Hertfordshire, of course, and independent ones, and they are represented on that committee. And yeah, in terms of juniors, we've got a great performance committee, and we actually do have also a performance manager who is that's a paid role. So, you know, which really I think has been one of the reasons. There's a number of reasons why our performance at all levels in Hertfordshire has really been better than you would expect from I know you called us a big county. In terms of population, we're probably not. I think we're a sort of a middle county, and I think we what do you call it? Bat above our weight. I can't. What's the saying? You know the saying, yeah.
Yes. So just going back to with your team, how many people you've got? Is it 12 on your management committee?
There's 9. There's only 9. We are looking actually at certainly based on the sort of workload and the different areas that are being focused on, you know, say by the LTA or us as well. That's probably not quite enough. So we probably are looking at extending that
Okay.
certainly to 10, I would have thought. Yeah.
Okay, so 10 on your management committee.
Yeah.
How many then on your subcommittees, making a total team of how many?
I would say, gosh, I should have done the research for this, Simon.
Just roughly, just very roughly.
I would say probably 40 to 50.
Okay, and how many paid staff do you have? You mentioned about having
Yeah.
one on.
So we've got 4 people who are paid in some way, and only 2 of those are full time. So we've got a paid. I think, to put it simply, I suppose, as administrator, that
Yes.
the person does way more than that, but let's say that. Then we've got this performance manager I was talking about, and then we pay a little bit towards sort of the county safeguarding officer.
Yes.
But it's a voluntary role, but we just pay a little bit there. And we have another sort of half an administrator. Yeah.
Okay. So, and how many clubs or venues have you got approximately?
Venues, we've got about 81.
Fine. Because then all the other counties watching this can get an idea
Yes.
for size and what.
Yeah, that's nice.
Great. Yeah. So going back to your earlier comment about reaching out into the county, how do you said that it's one of your main tasks and something you very much believed in,
Yeah.
whether it be via a newsletter or whichever method you choose to use. How do you reach out into the community to connect with either the clubs, the officials, the players, and all those volunteers? How do you do it? Everyone wants to know how every other county does it and how they're successful. So what's your success?
Yeah, I mean, how successful it is a very is a tricky one to give the answer to in a way, because we definitely want more engagement. We need more engagement. We don't get what we need. What we do a variety of communications. Social media, obviously, is very good. We have
Which is social media? Is that LinkedIn or Facebook or
Facebook
TikTok?
and Twitter.
Right.
Of course, I'm not on Twitter, but I'm not even on Facebook, to be honest. But we are, as the county is. That's the good news. So Facebook, Twitter, and whatever else there is, I'm sure. We put out. I'm sure you'll have seen this because, of course, you're from Hertfordshire as well, Simon. We have our annual newsletter, which is there you go. There's our annual newsletter, which we put out once a year, which has got loads of good stuff in it. We've sort of introduced the last few years, 2 or 3 years, what's called a bulletin, which goes out to all venues and our sort of friends every quarter.
Is that by email or by post?
It goes out by email. Yes, it's not. That one's not produced in hard copy, actually. So absolutely right, that does go out by email, and we try and ensure that it goes out in various different groups. There are email groups of, say, chairmen at venues, but I have, for example, 260 people on a competition, who competition contacts for me, so I send it out as well to them.
Yes.
And we try to get it out to as many people as possible. And I probably bore everyone who receives it with that. My first few words on there, the opening piece is always to get it out to as many of your volunteers in particular as you can, and also ask for any sort of invitations to come to venues to come from that. I've had quite a few through that. So when I started as president, I said, and this was a foolish thing to say, I said I was going to try and get to every venue in the county in that first year.
Yes.
Haven't quite appreciated how tricky that would be, because I'm in Watford, which is right down the southwest. It's quite a long way to the other side, and I think the cost of petrol hikes at the time as well. So, but I think I got to about a third in that first year, which was great, and for me that's the best part of this role, actually. Is going out and meeting the guys at these venues who the volunteers or what have you, who are doing some great things.
You, for example, on that, so you said you've got 9 on your management committee at the moment.
Yeah.
would you consider spreading the load? For example, you got to a third, that if all 9, just a thought, if all those 9 went and visited 10 each, it would be done and dusted, job done.
Simon,
Assuming they
well,
could,
two things there.
assuming they could work with your message, could you give them the message that you want to give to all these clubs to really get them going?
I've got 2 things to say to you there. One, very naughty, because number one, you've obviously been reading my mind, but also thank you to you, actually, because that's exactly what we're going to do, because it was on one of your volunteer community webinars that I went to. It feels like 3 months ago, maybe now.
Okay.
I thought it was a really, really good one. I picked up a number of things from that, and that was one, actually, that I mean, not that it was just me. It is just me going out to the venues, but absolutely, I think if you sort of say, you know, we've got 81 clubs, we've got 9 people on the management committee. Well, that actually coincidentally does divide by 9, I think. So you know, there's nine venues for each, and then you know, you could introduce that a member of the management committee to those venues. Any issues you have, he's, you know, this is the person, he or she is the person to go to. Hopefully that person will go out and visit all those venues. I think you'll get quite a good connection going there, actually. So yeah, that was, as I say, down to your webinar, that was a really good suggestion, which I think someone came up with, and it obviously worked for them.
Okay. So what is as the president or the chair, how do you liaise with the LTA in Roehampton? Do you leave that entirely to your councillor, or do you have any contact with Roehampton yourself, in your experience?
Yeah, well, I would say I have limited connections. I'll tell you about that in a second. But you touched on it there, because we've got a fantastic councillor.
Right.
Do I mention names on this? I probably don't, do I?
You can
No.
say and do whatever you like. There's no
Well,
rules
Bridie,
here. Okay.
Bridie Amos, who's a fantastic councillor. In fact, so good that she's actually, the LTA have asked her on to become a board member. So you know, that good. But she is still our councillor. She's also obviously plays a lead role on our management committee. But she is definitely, you know, the primary connection between us and the LTA. You know, she goes to 4 or 5 council meetings each year. But she's, you know, they're having been a councillor, I know how much linking there is with the LTA. There's an awful lot of communication with the councillor. She will then decide which things that she thinks people on the management committee, and you know, say me, I could get involved in. And so, you know, it's not everything. It's not appropriate that it's everything. Now, the LTA do then hold various forums for example, chairs. In fact, there was one this week. So I was on a Zoom call with I think it was 9 other chairs, county chairs, with the LTA. It was the president, actually, Sandy Proctor.
Yes.
So that was good, actually. Again, rather like with your webinars, you pick up ideas, and you learn that it's not just, you know, if you're having issues, it's not just you. You know, there's some common themes there, and that was also useful for Sandy, because she picked, you know, she could see there was a groundswell of feeling about these were the issues, or have you. So yeah.
Okay, great. So with reference to, we all know that there's a new LTA updated plan 2024 to 26, and I'm sure you as a county have been getting yourselves ready for that before its launch only a month ago, and it allows for additional funding for the county. It gives the priorities to where the LTA is heading and how our vision for British tennis is heading going forward for the next 3 years. Has it had an impact upon you as a county thus far, or do you think it will do? Can you see a lot of plus points in it to really raise the profile of tennis in Hertfordshire?
Yeah, I mean, and I would say in terms of impact so far, I'd say very, very little as yet, and almost it's almost a comeback to us next year. I think to see what
It's
it is.
it's
I
early
think
days, but it is
it
a
is.
carrier. It's an update on the 5-year plan that Scott Lloyd, our chief executive of the LTA, his original vision. So this is the updated.
It is, but a lot of it was, very much, let's not change everything. Let's keep going. Basically, I think,
Yes.
wasn't it? Was the general theme. I think that there's some good stuff in there. I think, maybe you're going to ask us about the issues we see, but I think along with that, I think there is a potential issue in that the LTO doing a bit of a restructure at the minute, or just going through with that, and I'm rather hoping that things calm down from that, because I think not just me, but some of the other county sort of chairs were envisaging potential issues with the loss of quite a few LTA sort of experts in their field, really going, and some really good contacts that have just been lost, actually. Yeah. So I think I'm hoping that that's not going to affect us and the venues too much, but I think time will be seen on that. In terms of the funding agreements, I think we're quite well placed on that. We haven't noticed any issues yet, but we're, as I say, we're very lucky in that we've got an extremely experienced treasurer who is sets everything out for us beautifully, so we can see what we've had before, where we are now, what are the potential issues going forward. So I think safely say that we haven't been affected negatively, certainly, by things at the minute. Yeah.
Okay, so you touched on funding just now and your treasurer's hard work.
Yeah.
So obviously the LTA are providing Hertfordshire with some funding and increased funding
Yes.
Based on history, but you also have to go out to raise your own funding to bolster your funds and to help all of the initiatives that you're doing. Can you just touch on a couple of the key successes that you have had over the years in that area?
Yeah, well, I think we have been very successful in that, and I'd say very fortunate, really. We've had some good people ensuring that we've had partners, as they're now called, a number of sponsors, really, who have been great in sort of supporting the game in the county, and we've had a very consistent, a lot of consistency there about the partners that have been involved. That's put us in a really good place, actually, I have to say.
Okay. Does one person go out and focus on that?
Yes.
Or is it so one member of your management committee?
We've had a member of the team,
right.
Not of the management committee team, actually,
right.
Who has majored on that, and it's gone very well, but you can't count your laurels, that's for sure. And so we probably need to think about, are there any different ways we can do this in the future, I imagine.
Okay, and you're relying on one person, all their contacts and all of their hard work.
We have been, yeah.
In that area, do you consider succession for that particular person? Because it sounds like that's a key
absolutely
area.
That is a key consideration,
right,
as we speak.
As we speak. Okay.
Yeah. So because you're absolutely right. We have now. I haven't mentioned it, which is terrible of me. Succession planning, and that's been probably my thing that's taken up most of my mind in the last year, apart from trying to get out to venues, has been the fact that, as I said, I've been on the management committee for 17 years. A number of our team have been on for longer than you would expect, let's put it that way, or would want necessarily, because you want new ideas,
yes,
etc. So yeah, that's one thing that we absolutely want to get to the bottom of, and part of that is finishing all this governance work so that you're in absolutely the right place, and you do all the practices are good, and trying to attract the right or some good people
Because your
onto
management,
the
because your
yeah.
management committee, you can only be on your management committee for so many years now.
Well,
And
yes,
therefore
that's right. I mean,
succession does come into it.
well, that's one of the things, of course, that has come in. But you've got to manage that properly. You can't just say, oh well, you know, all 8 of us or 9 of us have been on there for 7+ years, therefore we've got to go straight away. It doesn't, obviously, you wouldn't expect that to happen, and it hasn't. But it is happening the next couple of years, and needs to happen. And so yeah, we've got to manage that really well. And so the succession planning bit is hard, actually. It's hard.
Yes.
And we're constantly sort of asking, if for people who are keen to get involved, we've got some great people who are sort of putting their names forward. We just need to do things all in the right order, make sure we get things right so that we can point them towards the right places. They know what's involved in the roles, and do everything fairly and properly.
So I was going to ask you, what was your biggest challenge currently? You might say your succession planning is your biggest challenge, but do you have a bigger challenge than that?
I would say that probably is actually other big challenges. Well, maybe these aren't quite as big as that, but one is recognizing volunteers is for me is so important, because there's so many people out there doing such a lot of volunteering and such a great job, and we don't hear about it enough. I mean, as long as they're getting recognized locally, I'd be delighted. I don't know whether that's happening all the time, but in terms of, for example, the national award scheme, we recognise some fantastic people at our county, at the county level.
Yes.
You last year, Simon, for example, I think.
Thank you.
which is fantastic. So we never seem to miss out on recognising that, but we don't get enough suggestions put forward about, it'd be lovely to have sort of, 20 of our clubs put forward for Club of the Year.
We tend to have. So you want more
nominations? That's the word.
More nominations from your county and across the country, and you'd like to hear about some of the amazing things going on across the country, so that you can learn from them across the country to then introduce those locally as well. Yeah.
I mean, some counties, you're absolutely right. Some counties seem to have no problem at all doing this. It does vary dramatically by county. I've heard of some that get almost no nominations. We're towards that end, but luckily we have some fantastic nominations who go all the way to the national level, which is brilliant. And in fact, it's our awards evening in the county in about a week and a half's time, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I know who's coming along. There's some
good amazing. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for lifting the lid on what it's like to be a president of a county, and I'm sure we will bring you back again for another session again soon. But thank you very much on this occasion.
Absolute pleasure, Simon. Thank you. Thanks very much for asking me as well. I'll see you on court soon.
Lovely. Bye-bye.